Well, it's finally here after a 4-month delay. The first Saturday in September, the 2020 Kentucky Derby has officially had its post positions drawn, and it is a not so full field of 18 horses, but there's still some talent. So it's time to finally do the very overdue analysis of the 2020 Kentucky Derby field. First up, in post position number 1, we got Finnick the Fierce, the very likable one-eyed wonder. He's not that great. He is a mid-pack kind of horse who stays sort of mid-pack. Like, at best he'll get third, but he hasn't really shown a real great burst of speed. He's just a mid-pack kind of horse. He just doesn't really impress me, especially because when he's third, he is very, very far back. He's not like a close third, like, say, a horse such as Country House. He is far back, and he just kind of blends in with all the other long shots because of that. I don't really find anything too special about him. In post position number 2, we've got Max Player. Max Player is a horse that a lot of people actually really like because of his dual third place finishes in the Belmont and the Travers. And I honestly like that too because both times he was very far back and he came late to rack up some minor placings. And I think that's a good horse to use for a possible place or show bet. However, one thing to keep in mind is that he hasn't really dealt with a big field before. His biggest field, was 10 horses in the Belmont Stakes. But besides that, he hasn't really had a really big field, so navigation might be an issue. Also, all of his best successes have come in New York. Sure, he won in Pennsylvania, but that is one thing to keep in mind. He could just be a better New York horse. But that's kind of just a nitpick. I think Max Player is a very easy choice for a place or show bet, but he's not perfect. Navigating through 17 other horses is a very hard thing to do, and that's what he's going to have to do if he's going to want to try and win or get any minor placings. So keep that in mind. In post position number 3, we've got Enforceable. And Enforceable has the same odds as Max Player, and I don't think he deserves it. Sure, he had his win in the Lecomte Stakes, but after that second in the Risen Star, he's kind of done nothing impressive. He had a 4-month break, and at best he was just 5th and 4th. He really just doesn't impress me, because there are so many Derby horses in here that you have to choose based off of impressive minor placings, since there's only really 1 or 2 super exceptional horses. So, a horse like Enforceable is painfully average, and thus a toss for me. In post position number 4, we got the quote-unquote champion 2-year-old from last year, Storm the Court. As you can tell, I don't really have much enthusiasm for this horse. I find him an undeserving winner of last year's Eclipse Award, and since then he hasn't really won anything. Sure, he's gotten a couple of thirds and a second, but I think he's honestly a better turf horse, especially considering his father, Court Vision. Court Vision did run in the Kentucky Derby off a win in the Grade 2 Remsen Stakes and some third-place finishes. But you know what happened? He turned out to be a way better turf horse, even winning the Breeders' Cup Mile over Goldakova. I think Storm the Court is the exact same way. He has the ability to run on dirt, but he will be way better on turf, and that's all I have to say about him. He's a better turf horse, and he's only running in here just because he has the ability to. Toss. Next up in post position number 5, we got Major Fed, and Major Fed is a long shot that I think a lot of people like. He had a good second in the Risen Star and a good second in the Indiana Derby, and he did that with different racing styles. In the Risen Star, he was a bit closer up on the pace, about 4th or 3rd, and stayed in there till the end and finished 2nd. In the Indiana Derby, he started very far back, about 9th, and made up ground to be 2nd. So, he has versatility, and another thing he has is post position. Post position number 5 is one of the best post positions statistically, so Major Fed has a good chance of getting a better start, and thus he'll be able to run the race he wants, because he has the post position to do so. So definitely keep him in mind. He has a lot of things going his way. Next up is a horse that's been a fan favorite since March. We got number 6, King Guillermo. King Guillermo went to the Tampa Bay Derby as a big long shot, but once the race was over, he was a Derby favorite. Then after that, Nadal beat him in the Arkansas Derby, and then after that, King Guillermo didn't race again. and has been trained up to the Kentucky Derby. So the big question for him is fitness. Is he fit enough to be ready for the Derby? I believe that they probably trained him accordingly and he'll be ready for the Derby, but 4 months is still not a good look if you want to be ready for the Kentucky Derby. But he still is very impressive on paper. He's a stalker, staying right behind the leaders. He was second in the Tampa Bay Derby at the start, and then once they headed into the far turn, he just took over the lead and just let things go his way. Then in the Arkansas Derby, he stayed in second place behind Nadal and just could not catch him. So that is a bit of a weakness of his. If he lets a horse get on the lead a little too easily, they'll just run away from him. He likes just waiting for the front runners to tire and then just going right by him because he stays right on their tail the whole way through. So he's going to need that kind of front runner, and I'm not sure if he's going to get that. But at the same time, considering that he still can hang on to his position and doesn't really like to fade that much, I think he has a chance for a minor placing. But as we move away from King Guillermo, we go into a virtual unknown horse named Money Moves. Money Moves is probably the first horse since the Kentucky Derby's whole point system thingy started to not run in a Kentucky Derby prep race. It sounds ridiculous, but he managed to get into the Derby just off his nomination fee, because he's never ran in a stakes race in his life, and he's won twice and was second in his most recent start. So, incredibly inexperienced, and I feel like has no right to be in here because he didn't do anything to earn his spot. He just exists, and he happened to get in. He didn't run in any Derby prep races, and I don't think he even deserves to be in the race. But he is, so I think toss. I don't really trust a horse who's never ran in stakes races. They're just too unpredictable. In post position number 8, we got another long shot, but I think this long shot has some potential. His name is South Bend. South Bend is a horse that I've seen that has a good late kick. He's a closer. And that does lead to some problems, like with Max Player, and like with this horse, he's going to have a bit of trouble having to navigate the horses, as there are 18, and he's going to have to navigate through all of them. So that is going to lead to a challenge, but he has a great late burst of speed that I think is something to keep in mind. Then, in post position number 9, we have another long shot that I also like in Mr. Big News. But Mr. Big News is a very situational horse, because I think that if the Kentucky Derby race turns out to be sloppy, as some weather forecasts have suggested, use this horse. Because Mr. Big News came from near dead last in the Oaklawn Stakes, at odds of like 80-1, to win in the slop. He has amazing ability to run in the mud. He just came out of nowhere and won a super sloppy race, and he seemed like a nobody. He could do that again in this Derby. He can seem like a nobody, but when it's rainy, he turns out to be big news. So I really like this horse, his ability to run in the slop, and I think if the race is muddy, use him. Use him, definitely. And then we have the horse on the complete opposite spectrum. 1,000 Words. Sure, 1,000 Words won the Shared Belief Stakes, which was pretty impressive, but he's always struck me as more of a short router. He just doesn't seem like a horse who likes to run at a mile and a quarter. More importantly, he hates the mud. He was near last in the Oaklawn Mile, while Mr. Big News was busy surprising everyone. So, harsh toss for me. I just think that he's a California horse who only likes to run in California, because the only other race that he ran that wasn't in California that I have to go off was a 10th place finish, and I don't think that's something good to go off. So toss for 1,000 Words, but use Mr. Big News in the mud. Another toss for me would be Necker Island. He's ran a lot this year. He's ran 7 times, and most recently he's been doing some of his best work, running third in both the Indiana Derby and Ellis Park Derby, but I just wasn't that impressed with those races. He just seemed a bit distantly off, and like a few other long shots in this field, just comes off as your average typical long shot who gets a couple thirds and has just enough to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. Just a pass for me. I just don't find anything special about him. As we continue going through the passes, next up we got Sole Volante. I've heard some people who like this horse, but I don't know. I'm just not as much of a fan of him as other people are. Sole Volante kinda is striking me more as a middle distance horse, since his best performances have been at shorter distances. He won the Sam F. Davis at a mile and a 16th, and he won that allowance race against Ete Indian at 1 mile. And his best attempt at a mile and an eighth was a sixth place finish in the Belmont Stakes out of 8 horses. That kind of just makes me think that he seems like a short router and not really a horse who likes to go longer. I could be wrong, obviously, but I just don't really like him that much. I feel like he'd be a better candidate for something shorter, like the Malibu Stakes in the future. Then, for the next long shot on the list, we got Attachment Rate, who I think is another pretty good long shot. He is kind of the basic game and defeat Derby horse archetype. He was third in the Gotham Stakes by about a length, second in the Unbridled Stakes by about a length and a half, and then he was a well-beaten second in the Ellis Park Derby behind the now scratched Art Collector. Three pretty impressive performances sandwiched in between some Matt performances in the Matt Win and Bluegrass Stakes. I think he's a good horse. Nothing too special besides those decent performances. He's just a decent horse that I think is worth betting on if you want. But I couldn't say the same about Winning Impression. Winning Impression's 7th place finish in the Ellis Park Derby really turned me off. I just don't think that he's that impressive, and his only Derby performance that was kind of okay was his third in the Arkansas Derby, but one, he actually finished fourth. It was just because of Charlatans' disqualification that he got third, and when he crossed the wire, he was 9 lengths off the winner. Not that great. But if attachment rate was just the archetype of the game and defeat horse, NY Traffic is the ambassador, because he's had 3 straight second place finishes in major Kentucky Derby preps. He was second in the Louisiana Derby behind the now scratched Wells Bayou, and then he was second behind the also now scratched Maxfield in the Matt Win Stakes, and then he nearly won the Haskell Invitational, but lost by a nose. So, 3 very impressive performances that make New York Traffic, or NY Traffic, probably the easiest horse to make a place bet on. If you ever are feeling lazy and just want to pick chalk, then just use him, because he's almost a guarantee. But then again, this is horse racing. But now we're in the final 3. These last 3 horses are the most favored horses in the Kentucky Derby and the only ones to not have double-digit odds. First up, we got Honor AP, who some people really do like and some people really don't. Some people like to excuse his defeat in the Shared Belief Stakes as him not liking the distance and them just trying to get a race in, which is 100% true. That there's just no doubt about it. They needed to get him fit so that he wasn't going into the Derby off a 3-month layoff. And if you saw his win in the Santa Anita Derby, while it wasn't super impressive, it does show that he probably likes more distance, because the San Felipe and the Shared Belief were both a mile and a 16th, and both times he was just second. So I think the extra added distance will make him better, but at the same time, there's always the factor of, can he win outside of California? Because that is very much a legitimate thing to worry about. Because there are plenty of great horses who could only win in California and could never do anything else. So I think that's something to definitely consider. Will he like Churchill Downs? We'll just have to see. But on paper, I think he'll like a mile and a quarter. And then we got the horse of the hour. 'Tis the frickin' Law. 'Tis the Law, there's no reason for me to really talk about him further. He's won the Belmont, he won the Florida Derby, and he's won the Travers Stakes all with ease. I think we can all agree that everyone wants this horse to win, including me. It's mainly just about how the heck are we going to make a bet on 'Tis the Law actually worth some money by adding other horses into it. That's this whole Kentucky Derby. And then lastly, we got Authentic. And Authentic, I don't like. I think he's overrated. He's a Golden Sense archetype. He is a short router. At best, he can run at a mile and an eighth, and even then, he barely won the Haskell. That either was due to Mike Smith just misjudging the finish line, or he just doesn't like the distance. I think it's a bit of both. I think a mile and an eighth is the most he can run at comfortably. After that, he's done for. If you saw his defeat in the Santa Anita Derby, it was very clear that a mile and an eighth isn't a comfortable distance. And the Haskell Invitational, besides NY Traffic, sucked. It wasn't that good. And that is the last horse for the Kentucky Derby. So now it's time for the final picks. Who do I like for this Derby? Obviously, I can't go against 'Tis the Law. no matter how hard I try, I can't go against him for the win. But what about horses underneath? So for horses underneath, I'm going with NY Traffic and South Bend. Those are my main horses for using under. But if it's muddy, then I'm gonna swap out South Bend and go right in with Mr. Big News. Mr. Big News is my mud horse. No matter what, he will be my mud horse. So I hope you guys enjoyed my Kentucky Derby analysis. Comment down who you think is going to win the Kentucky Derby. And see you guys next time.
First leg of the 2020 Triple Crown. 'Tis the Law by 4 lengths.